Dharmasya nimittasya vibhagav paramishyaso. Madhus? Etavan jiva lokasya samstabheda samahritah dharmasya nimittasya vibhagav paramishyaso. Etavan jiva lokasya samstabheda samahritah dharmasya hi nimittasya vibhagav paramishyaso. Etavan, up to this, jiva lokasya, of the planets inhabited by the living entities. Samstabhedaha, different situations of habitation. Samahritaha, performed completely. Dharmasya, of religion. He, certainly. Animittasya, of causelessness. Vipakaha, mature stage. Paramishti, the highest personality in the universe. Aso, that. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Lord Brahma is the most exalted personality in the universe because of his causeless devotional service unto the Lord in mature transcendental knowledge. He therefore created all the 14 planetary divisions for inhabitation by the different types of living entities. Purport: the Supreme Lord is the reservoir of all the qualities of the living entities. The conditioned souls in the material world reflect only part of those qualities, and therefore they are sometimes called pratibimbas. These pratibimba living entities, as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, have inherited different proportions of his original qualities. And in terms of their inheritance of these qualities, they appear as different species of life and are accommodated in different planets, according to the planet Brahma. Brahma is the creator of the three worlds, namely the lower planets called Patala Loka, the middle planets called Bhur Lokas, and the upper planets called Swar Lokas. Still higher planets such as Maharloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka, and Brahmaloka do not dissolve in the devastating water. This is because of the causeless devotional service rendered unto the Lord by their inhabitants, whose existence continues up to the end of the Dviparabdha time, when they are generally liberated from the chain of birth and death in the material world. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yedabhutali Swayam Rupakada Mariam Tadati Swapadandikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamshta Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahakana Raganatam Vidam Tam Jahivam Sadhuitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Yohadha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shivashakan Vitamshta He Krishna Kuruna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tamta Kanjana Gaurangi Rati Vrindavaneshwari Vrishapanusute Devi Pranamami Hare Praye Vanchakapatu Ishchar Kripasunu Devachapatita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prashtaya Putuleshmate Bhakti Vikasa Swamin Itinamane, Nama Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prashtaya Putuleshmate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Itinamane, Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gauravani Pusharane, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi, Pashtete Dishatarane, Buddhir Mahadbiri Mafpura Libor, Nirmaya Shitiya, the Mushya Purasha, Bhungti Gunan Shodasha Shodashatmaka, Sarangashishta Bhagavan Vashamsime. Thus engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Brahma entered into the whirl of the lotus, and it was spread all over the universe. He divided it into 3 divisions of worlds and later into 14 divisions. Lord Brahma is the most exalted personality in the universe because of his causeless devotional service unto the Lord in mature transcendental knowledge. He therefore created all the 14 planetary divisions for inhabitation by the different living types, different types of living entities. So Lord Brahma, the previous verse we were speaking about, he contemplated how to create the planets, and now he's actually doing so. He divided it into 3, and then again later into 14. Therefore, we have these 2 divisions of how the planetary systems are sometimes classified, upper, middle, lower, and then you have the specific planetary systems themselves. So, These divisions are there. The 14 came after. And then it's mentioned here that, different things. The main point is that, in today's verse we have dharma hiya nimittasya, that dharma, so Lord Brahma, he was performing his dharma, but that dharma was causeless dharma. So the causeless dharma, because it was causeless, is understood to be specifically devotional service. Otherwise, just like we have this verse in the Bhagavatam that savai pumsa paro dharma yato bhaktir ahetuki pratiyata, that dharma is causeless. So that dharma is being described here, the devotional service unto adhokshaja. So the main point here, Lord Brahma is the most exalted personality in the universe. Why? Because of his causeless devotional service unto the Lord, immature transcendental knowledge. Srila Prabhupada elaborates on this. Lord Brahma, he's described here with a name, Parameshti, means like sta. He's situated. Sti. He is who is situated the highest among all the living entities in this world. He's situated the highest. We're hearing itavan jiva lokasya, but Brahma. So different living entities, they're placed on different planets according to their own qualification. But Lord Brahma, he's the highest of all living entities. He's sometimes called, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he's referred to as Jivotama, which means the same thing. He's the highest living entity. Among those living entities who have entered the material world, Lord Brahma, he's particularly empowered by Garbhodakashayi Vishnu to create, he's the most qualified living entity by dint of his typically devotional service mixed with karma or jnana, one of the two. And then Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, he puts that living entity in such a position, and he empowers that living entity, specifically with a mode of passion, to be able to create the material world. Otherwise, if there's no living entity available with such qualification, Garbhodakashayi Vishnu incarnates in or expands, and he does the work himself of creation. So, Lord Brahma is the most exalted living entity in the universe because of his devotional service. This is obvious. And Srila Prabhupada elaborates here on the qualities of Lord Brahma. With specifically Krishna, he says the Supreme Lord is the reservoir of all the qualities of living entities. So Lord Brahma is exalted. Why? Because Krishna is exalted. Because Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, who he's coming from, is also exalted. Brahma is a part and parcel of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, of Krishna. Mamaiva Msho Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha. So everything that Lord Brahma is doing, Vishnu can also do. More so, actually. Lord Brahma, he possesses the qualities of Vishnu, of Krishna specifically, and parts and everything that Brahma is able to do, how Brahma looks, how he acts, his qualities, everything about him, his intelligence, his form, everything has its origin in Krishna. Everything about him is coming from Krishna. So Lord Brahma is the most exalted living entity, but he's only a fragment. He's a fragment. The living entity is a fragment, basically. He's a fragment of Krishna. So Lord Brahma is exalted. His qualities are exalted. He's the most exalted living entity in the material world, but only so because he's manifesting. He's that living entity within the material world who most fully, aside from pure devotees, who most fully, of course, Lord Brahma can also be a pure devotee, as he is here, but generally speaking, Lord Brahma is that living entity within the material world who most fully manifests the qualities of Krishna. Of course, there's pure devotees and whatnot, but generally speaking, among those living entities who are entrapped by their karma, Lord Brahma is the highest. So, so these qualities of Lord Brahma, they have their origin in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And even while conditioned, and every living entity, it's not that Brahma is particularly special in one sense. Every living entity has the capacity to become a Brahma, as we were at one point. And then we can again become a Brahma, and we can exhibit the expertise, the learning, the capability, the intelligence, the strength, just like here. The living entities, the planet Brahma we read about, the different planets. Lord Brahma, he situated the different living entities on different planets according to his own plan. So he made a plan how to create the whole material world and situate the living entities within it. I think he actually did it. How wonderful an act. How wonderful a thought. How wonderful a plan. How wonderful an act. It seems wonderful to us, but we can do that same thing. We possess the inherent capacity to do that same thing, because that capacity to do so, it's coming from Krishna, and we're also part and parcel of Krishna. Superficially, we may appear different from Lord Brahma, but we're of the same quality in that we're both pure spiritual souls, and we have the same capacity to act as Lord Brahma. It's just Lord Brahma, he's situated in such a material body, in such a situation, that different qualities, which have their origin in Krishna, are allowed to manifest more. So the living entity, he's given a different type of body, and based upon the body the living entity has, these qualities of Krishna that every living entity is imbued with, Krishna has 64 qualities. I think the living entities manifest 50, something like that, up to 50. And then there's different calculations like that. But so among Krishna's qualities, you can see these in the Nectar Devotion. Krishna is expert, he's artistic, he is thoughtful, he is beautiful, he is very attracted to women, he's a very good expert linguist. So many other things are there. He's very tolerant, he's humble. So the living entities are also the same thing. The living entity is also by nature humble. He's Satchitananda. He's always happy. Another quality of Krishna. He's happy. He's very intelligent. He's artistic, etc. So these same qualities of Krishna, of course, Krishna possesses these qualities to the unlimited extent, but the living entity can also possess these qualities to the extent that Krishna allows or wants him to. But nevertheless, it's just like an electrical current or like a power line. It can deliver, theoretically, as much voltage as you possibly want. It's just how much you regulate the voltage that's coming in. So Krishna, he can regulate the voltage in a living entity. Otherwise, he can empower a living entity to possess, just like one quality of Krishna is, he's very merciful. But Krishna's power is such that he can empower a living entity to be not only as merciful as him, but to be more merciful than him. Paradoxically so. Even though that power is coming from Krishna, materially it doesn't make sense, but we understand it transcendentally. So Krishna possesses such, and the idea is that the living entities possess these qualities inherently. Every single living entity inherently has these qualities, and Krishna empowers or attracts depending on what he particularly wants. For the pure devotees, he does so Krishna does so based upon the relationship with him and what Krishna wants to see in their service. For the conditioned living entities, these qualities are they shine through the colored lens of the material body and mind. So they appear in a perverted form, in other words. So we see in this world the same qualities. Just like people are artistic in this world, but that artistic sense is not exactly the same artistic sense that we're talking about when we come to the artistic sense of Krishna or the pure devotee. For example, it's just like Krishna enjoys amorous pastimes, and living entities enjoy sex in this world. So superficially they appear the same, but actually they're completely different. So similarly, the same thing. So these qualities, but the quality is there, that's the point. So the living entities have these qualities, and they appear via the conditioned material elements. So the living entities are respectively differently, according to the position of the living entity. He's comparatively more learned, he's comparatively more shy, he's comparatively more tolerant, expert, strong. Different living entities are stronger than one another, even within the same species. We see monkeys are very strong, or elephants are very, very strong. Human beings, they can be somewhat strong, but not nearly as strong as an elephant. So the quality is manifested differently. Krishna is unlimitedly strong. Balaram is unlimitedly strong. Krishna lifted Govardhan hill with his pinky, so his strength is infinite, and he can empower his pure devotee to do so, just like we hear, for example, about the strength of Madhvacharya, for example. So Krishna is unlimited. His pure devotees also have no cap to their qualities. So far, Krishna wants to empower them. But the living entities have a cap. Even Lord Brahma, he has a cap. We hear, for example, Lord Brahma, he's the most intelligent living entity in the universe, but still he was bewildered as to how to create the world again. For example, and then we also hear, not this Brahma, but later a different Brahma of a different universe is talked about. He was bewildered by his senses. and chasing after his own daughter. So even Brahma has his own limitations, generally speaking. And yeah, these, like I mentioned, so these qualities are displayed differently depending upon the form of life. Lord Brahma is the highest form of life within the material world, and so these qualities are exhibited in his form to the highest. So he's the most artistic. We can paint a very nice picture, but Lord Brahma, he's such an artist, he painted the whole material world. He created the whole material world with the ingredients that Krishna supplied. So the higher the form of life, the more qualities of Krishna are manifest in that living entity, generally speaking. So demigods possess the most qualities. We hear, for example, the verse in Bhagavatam, Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarver gunas tetra samasate suraha. Those qualities of the demigods, all the good qualities of the demigods are manifest in a devotee. So the demigods, they generally possess qualities to a much greater extent than other living entities in this world. And generally, that's the trend. The higher you go in the planetary systems, the more the living entities on those planets demonstrate the qualities of Krishna. Of course, not directly so, through this perverted form we're talking about, but still, that's there. We see, for example, human beings are very, well, not to speak of humans, animals, they have practically, there's no question of an animal being learned, for instance. Nor is there really a question of an animal being very tolerant. Maybe some animals, but mainly that tolerance may be there because of their blunted intelligence. Otherwise, human beings are much more tolerant than animals. They're much more intelligent than animals. Comparatively, they look more beautiful than animals, although that's a little subjective. But if you go higher to the demigods, they're way more intelligent than a human being. They're way more happy than human beings are. They're way more thoughtful, artistic, everything you can think of, more shy than a human being. So many things, just like we hear, the demigods, they don't grow old, generally speaking. At the end of their life, right when they're about to leave their material body, then they give up, then their everything, their garlands fade, their body fades, and then they move on to the next form of life. This is described in the Bhagavatam. Otherwise, they're always possessing a youthful or young form, but that youth eventually goes. But the human form of life, that youth is there for 30, 40 years or so, and then it starts to fade, something like that. So anyway, the point is these qualities are manifest and more fully in the higher planetary systems. And the demigods, in one sense, can represent Krishna because they manifest the qualities like this, or just as Lord Brahma does so in one sense. And another sense, so why is it like this? Well, demigod, based upon one's karma, the qualities of Krishna are desirable. Why? Because one is the living entity's own inherent qualities, so he's wanting to get those qualities back, which Maya has robbed from him, or rather that Maya is covering. So he's looking for those qualities. Those qualities are attained by good karma, but which is a fact that one can only be learned by good karma. One can only be very beautiful, janmaishvaya shuta shribihi, etc. One only gets these things, high learning, high birth, high education, opulence, by karma, which is Krishna's mercy in one sense. Another way, so the demigods, they have good karma, so they have these qualities, and obviously so. Another way of looking at it is that the demigods, or they're devotees of Krishna, Dval Bhuta Sarga Lokismin, Daiva Asura Evacha, Vishnu Bhakta Smrito Daiva Asuras Tadviparyaha. The demigods, there's two classes of living entities, Padma Purana says, demons and demigods. Those who are Vishnu Bhaktas, they are demigods. So the demigods, the devas, they're materially motivated devotees, some of them, the majority of them, but nevertheless they're devotees. So, because they're devotees, these good qualities automatically manifest in them, because they're rendering devotional service. Here, just corroborating the same thing, that actually it's in the verses. So Lord Brahma is most exalted. Why? Because of his devotional service. So these exalted qualities come, and these qualities come because of devotional service. In other words, and demigods, they render devotional service. So they have these qualities to a very great extent. Therefore, you see, and these qualities manifest more fully than can be possibly done so even by trying to cultivate these qualities independently. Just like as a human being, you can try to become learned, but how smart can you become as a human being? Your memory and intelligence only extends so far. But if that memory and intelligence is given by Krishna, how much greater it could be. Therefore, you see such a gap between Lord Brahma's intelligence, or the intelligence of general demigods, and that intelligence of human beings, for instance. Or even between Lord Brahma himself and even lesser demigods. For instance, we don't hear of the Ashvini Kumaras even approaching the point of creating the whole universe. There's such a gap in the intelligence. Why? Because those qualities are becoming more fully manifest by the mercy of Krishna, because of devotional service that's being rendered. Of course, that mercy of Krishna can manifest in different ways. We talked about this. One way is by fruit of results. Krishna can give such things, the results of karma. So, in one sense, the demigods demonstrate exalted qualities because of their devotional service to Krishna, not necessarily by karma. So, in other words, the more one is purified by Krishna consciousness, the more one demonstrates these qualities. It's obvious, we hear about this in reading in Srila Prabhupada's books, that as we go on, just like I quoted this verse, this Yasyasti Bhagavati, etc., like that the more one renders Krishna consciousness, the more actually the demigods enter into the heart of a devotee and exhibit their qualities, and those qualities become manifest in the heart of a devotee, in the character of a devotee. So, a devotee possesses all the good qualities of the demigods. Automatically so. He doesn't have to strive independently, even necessarily to do so. A devotee is by nature humble. He's by nature very expert. He's by nature he's able to control his senses. Why? Not necessarily, although these qualities can be cultivated independently. For example, one quality of a devotee is that he's poetic. Krishna is also poetic. So we see, even in this material world, there are karmis who are very great poets, for example. So, and even by training or practice, some people inherently so by their karma, but even you can train, you can practice to an extent and you can learn poetry, learn different poetic meters, even in Sanskrit, if you take it like that, even if you just discard English poetry. There's so much literature written in Sanskrit that's just karmi literature. It has something to do with devotional service, or it has something to do with the Vedas, rather, we'll say, because Sanskrit is just sort of like that, but it doesn't mean it's transcendental, for example. So we hear about people practicing tolerance, becoming a more tolerant person. So these qualities, to what extent they can be cultivated independently. But in Krishna consciousness, we don't necessarily have to do that. These things come automatically, and Srila Prabhupada would emphasize this, that you go on rendering devotional service, and these qualities naturally become manifest, and the devotee naturally becomes poetic. He doesn't necessarily have to In fact, it's expected, and one lecture, Srila Prabhupada was making the point that it's expected that a devotee is supposed to be poetic. If you've been rendering in Krishna consciousness for some time, it's expected that you're supposed to be poetic, even though you may not practice poetry in your life and know nothing about it. It's a sign of progression in Krishna consciousness. These things can be cultivated independently, but for a devotee, they come automatically. Other things, they can't necessarily be cultivated independently. Just like, for example, control the senses. How can karmis control their senses? It's impossible. Maybe impersonalists can do so to some extent, but real sense control comes through Krishna consciousness. Other things is completely impossible to cultivate. Other qualities of a devotee are impossible to cultivate outside of Krishna consciousness. Just like one quality of devotee is that he's never influenced by Maya. Well, you can't necessarily cultivate that quality, can you? That quality has to be bestowed upon you by the mercy of Krishna. Because that Maya is Krishna. Krishna says in Gita that by his mercy one overcomes Maya. Otherwise, even a personalist can't overcome the influence of Maya. So some of these qualities one can cultivate independently, but really, for devotee, we're more depending. Actually, for devotee, we're concerned with rendering service to Krishna primarily, and then as we progress, these things come about naturally, because they're inherent to ourselves. These Krishna's qualities are inherent. I mean, we're part and parcels of Krishna. These qualities are within us. So naturally, the more we become liberated from the subtle, the gross body and the subtle mind, the more these qualities are manifested in our characters. So as we progress in Krishna consciousness, these things come about. Yeah, you see this in the lives of many devotees. Just recently, we had a class about Jayananda Prabhu. For example, he demonstrated many of these qualities. Humility, pride, pridelessness is sort of the same thing. Tolerance, simplicity, satisfaction. Many of these qualities can be seen in the pure devotees of the Lord. Sometimes not. Sometimes we see pure devotees don't manifest these qualities, even though we should understand that they're supposed to possess them. One quality, if we look at the qualities of Krishna, so every jiva, every living entity possesses all the at least the 50 qualities of Krishna. And if you look at the quality, I mean, philosophically, it makes sense. If you look at the qualities of Krishna, well, Krishna is supposed to be, for example, very expert linguist, as I quoted before. But Gaura Kishore Das Babaji was illiterate. Even when he could speak Bengali, but he couldn't write it, for example. So even with his own language, so how to understand? He's a pure devotee. He's unconditioned by the material elements. He's supposed to possess this quality of being an expert linguist and highly learned, but he didn't. It doesn't look like it, like at all. So, back to this point I was making earlier, pure devotee, for those pure devotees, these qualities may or may not be manifest, depending on what Krishna wants for that devotee. Depending upon that situation Krishna arranges for his devotees, he may empower or retract accordingly. Just like we hear, Arjuna was, the strength of Arjuna, for instance. He was incredibly strong, being directly empowered by Krishna himself. Yet, when he was ambushed by a gang of infidel cowherd men, as said in the Bhagavatam, he was overcome by them, and then he lost. Then the wives, Krishna's wives, who were of Dwarka, the queens of Dwarka, they were kidnapped by the cowherd men. But Arjuna was able to overcome so many Kshatriya warriors on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So how is it that a bunch of cowherd men were able to it doesn't make sense. Why? He says, because that power was withdrawn from me. So Krishna can empower or withdraw, invest power in a devotee, or withdraw accordingly, as I was making the point earlier. So if we see pure devotees, they don't necessarily manifest these qualities. We're to understand that Krishna is not, those qualities are there, they're just not being exhibited for whatever purpose that Krishna wants. So yeah. Other things, within Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, he gives 26 qualities of devotee. We have these 50 that are mentioned in the Nectar Devotion in regards to Krishna, which we also understand the living entity possesses. There's another list in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami gives 26 qualities of devotee, which are, for the most part, can't be hidden, which he writes that they're unmistakably manifest in a Vaishnava, and from which one can distinguish a Vaishnava from a non-Vaishnava. So you can look at this list that's there in Madhya Lila, somewhere around the Sanatan Shiksha chapters. Lord Chaitanya is instructing Sanatan Goswami. Some of which I've quoted, some of which there's overlap, some of which are unique in regards to the 50 versus the 26. Sometimes there's overlap, some are unique. Of course, we also understand Krishna also possesses all those 26. Krishna is the reservoir of all qualities. Actually, Prabhupada writes here, he's the reservoir of all the qualities of the living entities. So even by extension, those qualities which are not mentioned in those lists, say, for example, anger, which generally good qualities are mentioned in those lists, but good qualities only by material estimation. Krishna's anger and Krishna's lust are also good qualities, although in the material world they're not generally taken to be so. So everything comes from Krishna, even the so-called bad qualities of this material world. But the bad qualities in the material world, they're considered bad by us because they're in a perverted form. Otherwise, in their pure spiritual form, they're completely Shuddha Sattva. They're completely good, purified mode of goodness. So yeah, anyway, so all these qualities manifest in, a devotee possesses all these qualities. He doesn't necessarily have to strive to do so. People in this world, they very much want, generally they want these qualities. People want to become very beautiful, highly learned. They want, there's so many things. Generally, if you look at these lists, what's taken. Shyness is generally considered a good quality. Humility is generally considered, even by karmis, to be a good quality. Although in some circles, maybe not. Pride is sometimes taken as among some demonic people. But generally, these things are taken as good. If somebody is very artistic, that's taken as a very good thing. So everything good comes from devotional service. Everything that we could possibly desire comes from devotional service, even materially so. We're hearing here that because, so the lower and middle planetary systems, they're annihilated in the partial devastation, but the upper planetary systems aren't. And it said, why? Why is this so? This is because of the causeless devotional service rendered unto the Lord by their inhabitants, whose existence continues up to the end of the Dviparardha time. So why? Why does devotional service particularly bestow upon the residents of the upper planetary systems the not being annihilated? Well, generally, it's nice not to be destroyed by devastating waters, materially so, but transcendentally so, it doesn't really matter. Whether a devotee lives or dies, he continues on, and he continues in his service to Krishna. But materially speaking, it's very nice if you don't die. So even material things, what's generally good, considered good or desirable in the material sense, even those things come from devotional service. Just like fallen yogis or fallen devotees, they're placed in high families in this material world, which is desirable even by karmis. Birth in a high family or birth in an aristocratic family. So even these things come from devotional service. We hear, for example, by Dhruva Maharaj's devotional service, he was granted not only darshan of Vishnu, Lord Hari, but also he was given what he wanted materially. He was given a kingdom even greater than Lord Brahma. So by devotional service, both spiritual, there's everything spiritually desirable comes about, all spiritual perfection, and also everything materially desired can come about as a byproduct. It promotes spiritual and material well-being. Both things spring from devotional service. So in the higher planetary systems, they enjoy so many things by dint of the devotional service: greater length of life, health, beauty, intelligence. They're not annihilated when the universe is partially devastated, among so many other things. Why? Because there's devotional service. So similarly, even within this Earth planet, so many things can come from devotional service. Srila Prabhupada makes the point, for example, you read in Science of Self-Realization, crime, why, and what to do. Srila Prabhupada tells the lieutenant that if you just introduce Krishna consciousness into society, crime will be stopped entirely. Krishna consciousness is not necessarily meant for stopping crime. That's not the point of Krishna consciousness. But as a byproduct, crime is stopped by Krishna consciousness. Similarly, so many other things come about. Srila Prabhupada will often make the point that, so many things, so many societal issues Srila Prabhupada would touch on. Overpopulation can be solved, well, actually considered an artificial problem, but scarcity of rainfall and scarcity of food can be solved. How? By Krishna consciousness. Because the more people are chanting Hare Krishna, then rain won't be an issue, then production of grains won't be an issue. Even material problems can be resolved by Krishna consciousness, because Krishna consciousness bestows even materially desirable things. Just like in the Bhagavatam, we have akama sarva kama, moksha kama udaradihi, tivrena bhakti yogina yajita purusham param. By devotional service unto the Supreme Person, all that's desirable, all that is accomplished, everything you could possibly desire, for those who don't desire anything, and for those who are desirous of liberation, all three classes of people, they have the desires fulfilled by Krishna, by devotional service. Srila Prabhupada writes in the intro to the Bhagavatam, but there's a pinprick somewhere in the social body at large, and therefore there are large-scale quarrels, even over less important issues. There is a need of a clue how humanity can become one at peace, friendship, and prosperity with a common cause. Srimad Bhagavatam will fulfill this need, for it is a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire human society. But the Bhagavatam has nothing to do with these things. The Bhagavatam doesn't necessarily have anything directly to do with peace, friendship, prosperity. In the second verse of the Bhagavatam, prosperity is rejected. Artha is rejected in the second verse of the Bhagavatam. But naturally, through devotional service, artha, wealth, gradually comes. Of course, artha can mean different things, but wealth automatically comes from Krishna consciousness. Of course, that's not the point, and that's not the primary purpose, but all these things can be, even peace. You take peace. Srila Prabhupada is mentioning peace here. Peace, the point of Krishna consciousness is not necessarily to attain a state of peace, like impersonalists strive after. For instance, we're not looking after moksha, we're looking after seva, we're looking for devotional service. And with service, often anxiety comes in service, more often than not. So Krishna consciousness doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily focused on creating a very peaceful situation. Nevertheless, a peaceful situation and peace comes about through Krishna consciousness. We have in the Gita, for example, Bhaktaram Yogatapasam Sarvalokam Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gyatva Mam Shanti Vrichati, that those who know Krishna as these things, the proprietor of all planetary systems, automatically they attain peace. Although that's not the point of Krishna consciousness, automatically they attain these things. So Krishna consciousness yields everything. All problems are solved by Krishna consciousness, both material and spiritual. Srila Prabhupada said even there will be no nuclear war if they, means others in society, take to Krishna consciousness. The Ishopanishad, for instance, it's translated there, all incompleteness is because of the incomplete understanding of the complete whole. So when we understand Krishna, by understanding Krishna, naturally everything becomes complete. And naturally every problem in life comes from forgetfulness of Krishna in one degree or another, directly or indirectly. So as far as the root cause is addressed, then everything else lies into place. Srila Prabhupada said this world can become like Vaikuntha, even now, if even a percentage of the population takes to Krishna consciousness. By introduction in Krishna consciousness within society, so many desirable things can come about, automatically so. So, for a devotee, just wrapping up here, everything comes from Krishna consciousness, both what is spiritually desirable and also materially desirable, because ultimately, the ultimate desirable thing is Krishna consciousness. That's what everybody is looking for. So many tangential things can come from Krishna consciousness, and just like, for example, these qualities we're mentioning about, beauty, etc., like that. So, residents of Vaikuntha, they're very beautiful. They have exquisitely beautiful forms, even more so than the demigods. It's stated somewhere that the residents of Vaikuntha, they're infinitely more beautiful than even the women of Vaikuntha. They're infinitely more beautiful than those damsels of the demigod within the Swargaloka, for instance. So, of course, it's a secondary thing. But nevertheless, in this world, people desire things like this. So people desire these qualities, people desire resolutions to problems, people desire the fulfillment of the material desires, they want some sort of material object. But ultimately, everything, especially in this world, it's just a reflection of what is actually there in the spiritual world. So, the more we become purified by Krishna consciousness, by executing the process of Krishna consciousness, the more we approach that spiritual world, and the more the qualities and everything that's seen in the spiritual world becomes manifest both in our character and in our lives. Naturally so. How is it that by executing Krishna consciousness, the society can become like Vaikuntha? Because if the population mold their lives to become, if they act like residents of Vaikuntha, naturally the society also becomes like Vaikuntha. So, like this. Therefore, this is what is meant, and by this translation here, Lord Brahma is the most exalted personality in the universe because of his causeless devotional service. He's closer to Krishna, therefore he's more exalted. He possesses all these attractive things. So, both spiritual and material. So, okay, I can end there and take any comments or questions anybody has now. Yes?
In regards to the statement that Srila Prabhupada makes in the end of the purport, that the residents of the upper planetary systems, they are not affected by the partial devastation, partial devastation. They are liberated at the end of the cycle of the universe.
Yeah.
So it seems like, and it seems like they go to Vaikuntha after this. after that.
Yeah, it seems like it. Generally, Yeah, you have more?
Yeah, and so it seems like, hey, look, even if you just made it to Maharloka or Tapaloka or Janaloka, you're good to go because one of these planetary systems, I'm wondering, I think it's Tapaloka or Maharloka, one of the two. If you're just a brahmachari, Naishtika brahmachari your whole life, you can just go back. You can go to Maharloka or Tapaloka, and then it seems like from there you can just go to the planet of Lord Brahma and then go back to Vaikuntha. Right? So, what's the, why aren't these planets advertised? Why?
Well, generally, it's a gradual process. You can do like that. You could do like that. And generally, not generally. One point is, it depends upon, from what I understand from another purport elsewhere, it depends upon Lord Brahma. If Lord Brahma is a devotee, it's written, I think Sridhar Swami makes the point, Srila Prabhupada translates that if Lord Brahma is a devotee, or inclined towards devotional service, then the residents of his planet, Brahmaloka, are liberated along with him. Now, presumably, that liberation also extends down to this Maharloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka as well, presumably.
Satyaloka is Lord Brahma's planet, right?
Or here, there's a distinction, actually. Sometimes it's said like that. Here, in the purport, there's Satyaloka and Brahmaloka. Sometimes they're equated. I don't know exactly how the division is being calculated there. But regardless, regarding the main point, it seems dependent upon at least the Brahma, if not Brahma, the presiding deity of that planet, if he's inclined to devotional service or not. Because otherwise, Brahma is not a devotee, the residents of Brahmaloka don't attain liberation along with him. Now, of course, you can boil it down to specific individuals as well, but this is like a general statement. And then, but other points are that within these other lokas, I think either Tapaloka or Siddhaloka, Narada Muni is a resident of.
Yes, Narada Muni is a resident of Siddhaloka.
Yeah.
And he has an ashram called Narayan Ashram.
Yes.
By the way.
So the residents there can avail of his association. For instance, that's a pretty good association. Heck,
that's a good one.
So, therefore, it's not that you have to come down to as Gita says, it's not that you have to. Gita, there's a general description there. They enjoy life in the heavenly planets, and then they come down. But not all of them. Those who, of course, there's so many different situations you can be in devotional service. Some people may, just like we hear, I was mentioning Jayananda Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada wrote that if he had some tinge of material desire, he went to the heavenly planets and he will progress from there. So, some people just progress from there. Srila Prabhupada, he purportedly said that most of my disciples will become demigods. Some may eventually fall back, as he said in one lecture. It means a gap of millions of years. Fall down means a gap of millions of years. Or it doesn't necessarily have to be fall down. Could just be some material desire was there. You go to the heavenly planets, purify yourself of them, or either get rid of that material desire somehow and then progress from there. So it's not always just doom and gloom that, you fall down from devotional service, have to come back, etc. like that. Presumably, there are many cases of those who go to the heavenly planets, for instance. Or many, just like we hear in the Bhagavatam, we have cases like that. Like, who is it? Narada Muni liberating the two... No, not Ashwini Kumars.
No.
What are the names?
Nalakura and Mangri.
Yeah, for example. So they were residing on the heavenly...
That's really...
So they attained the form of... They had a demigod birth, which means they must have rendered devotional service. You can't go to the higher planetary systems unless you're a devotee of Vishnu, for example. So they had some sort of devotional service, and they attained liberation from there. Well, actually, I don't know. I think they went back to their forms.
They went back.
But
when they went back, they were...
they progressed from there. It's not that they fell down.
They were serious when they got back.
Yeah, so we have instances, for example, of those continuing on like that. So why is it not advertised? Well, you can do so if you so desire, but it's not recommended because otherwise the point is that everything that you could possibly... Say you want to go to the heavenly planets, why would you want to go there? Okay. Well, many different reasons. You can boil it down to sense gratification. But the thing is, everything desirable that's in the heavenly planets is just a reflection of Vaikuntha anyway. So even if you have such a mentality, of course the mentality is wrong, don't get me wrong, but an intelligent person will understand, well, why should I go to Swargaloka, if I can just go to Vaikuntha, which Swargaloka is anyway just a perverted reflection of. For instance, there's no need to go to Swargaloka unless you really intensely have like a material desire to like, I don't know, fulfill there or something like that. Or just want to see it. Some devotees, as mentioned in the second canto, some yogis on their way up, they just want to see what Swargaloka is like on their path of ascent. So some are just curious, could be, but it's useless in one sense because anyway, if you go to the spiritual world, you can see it. And Narada Muni, he travels freely. He can go anywhere he wants. So once it's not advertised, well, generally because just there's no need to advertise it, more or less.
It seems that when Krishna speaks about the Gatagatam Kama Kama Labhante in the ninth chapter, it seems like it stops that Swarga enjoyment, Swarga Lokam Vishalam Shine Punye Marti Lokam Vishanti. It seems like it's up to the planet of Indra, because above the planet of Indra is Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Siddhaloka, whatever, Satyaloka, all these planetary systems are present. And it seems like those personalities, those devotees in those different realms, they are not so much into sense gratification. Even if you read the Brihad, you've read the Brihad Bhagavatamrita?
No, I haven't.
Anyone read? Okay. You read, yeah. So it says that in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita that these people in those planetary systems, they are just worshipping Krishna through some are worshipping Krishna through the process of yajna, where they perform yajna and the Supreme Lord personally comes and takes the offering and they get to see him. And then in other planet they're worshipping him through the mind and they get to see the Supreme Lord in in their mind the whole time. So it seems like that's the reason why the statement is being made, right? Because otherwise, yes, because we see in the Bhagavatam, there's so many instances, in the heavenly planets, Indra, this happened, Indra, that happened, and all these things, and they fight with the demons, the demigods, and there's a big drama. But we never hear that, the residents of Tapaloka and Brahmaloka, they just fell into Maya and fell down. We never hear that at all, actually, right, in the Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
So is that the reason why it's written like that?
Yeah, another point I was thinking in regards to those verses you were quoting, Krishna specifically says there that how's it translated? Those who study the Vedas and drink so much juice, sinking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. So what Krishna is speaking about here, not necessarily...
I was quoting chapter 9, text number 21, 22. So 20 and 21.
Yeah, this here. Trividya Mam Sumapam. So what Krishna is talking about here isn't necessarily devotees, necessarily so. Although it could be, in one sense, applied towards devotee. But Krishna is specifically saying here that those who want to in other words, those who practice Vedic sacrifices specifically, it's said here, Trividyaha, or it's implied, rather, and those who want elevation to the heavenly planets, as the Vedic sacrifices are meant to do. So those who do so, they go up, enjoy, then they come down again. But for devotees, for the devotee, so that instance is a little separate. In other words, although you could apply that to devotees, the more applicable for the devotees is the inquiry by Arjuna regarding the fallen position of a yogi. But even that inquiry regards specifically yogi. Arjuna phrased the question as such. Although it's also applicable to devotees because the devotees are also yogis.
It seems like there's a karma kanda.
It's a karma kanda thing. Generally, yeah, exactly. That's principally what Krishna is speaking on here. So for devotees, it could be such for a devotee if he has the material desires like that. Could be like that. We hear, for example, of our own spiritual master saying that devotees, they take birth, they go up, coming up and down, because they don't purify themselves of the material desires. But if one is trying to purify himself of the material desire, but just has weakness of heart, then that gradual elevation is there.
Because it says when you go to Brahmaloka, before you go there, you go to a planet known as Vaivarna. It's a fire planet. And when you go there, you get there and you're purified of your material contaminations. And then you first have a body which is earthly, and then you have a body which is watery, then you have a body which is fiery, then you have a body which is what's the word? Glowing. That's what the Bhagavatam says, glowing. And then you finally have an ethereal body. And then eventually, by associating with pure devotees like Lord Brahma, then you go. Because because like you were saying, it seems like it depends on the Lord Brahma of the universe.
Another thing is that when you're in it seems to me generally, this is philosophical speculation, but it seems to me if you're in, for example, Brahmaloka, well, you can perceive the spiritual world from Brahmaloka. You can see.
Yeah, right. That's right.
It's not necessarily like this earthly planet. We're so grossly covered by earth, water, fire, etc. like that, and we have this is Krishna real. It's like this like word. It's like you could see it.
Yeah.
Lord Brahma directly interacts with Krishna regularly. For example, the demigods we hear in the Bhagavatam, they approach Lord Brahma in distress, and then Lord Brahma he just goes to the ocean of milk, and he directly offers prayers to the Lord Vishnu, for example. And then Krishna directly appeared. So it's not like the demigods are like bereft of they have some material desire, but I mean for them it's not necessarily in the earthly planets. Like there's a higher degree of faith, you could say. But I mean, don't get me wrong, faith is also there, it's also necessary. But the thing is, you can perceive the reality of Krishna consciousness, even for an ordinary demigod. Of course, that's there because of their elevation to Krishna consciousness already. It's not just, but so yeah.
It seems like in one day of Lord Brahma, how many avatars are coming, right?
Yeah,
how
exactly.
many, and then he sees Lord Chaitanya every day. Right? Lord Chaitanya appears, he sees Lord Chaitanya every day. By the time he blinks his eyes and opens his eyes, that's 96,000 of our years, and by Lord Chaitanya's mercy, so many people go by. So it seems, that's probably why that Prabhupada is making that statement there, right? They get to see Lord Chaitanya every day. Every day. And then in the different parts of the days, you see, Varaha and Kurma and Narsama, but you also see Lord Chaitanya. It's amazing, that statement. I mean, it just blew my mind when I read that.
Mitravan Prabhu, you had something?
You were mentioning that by karma ones get good material qualities, right? People don't necessarily have to be devotees. So I was wondering, heavenly planets are people with good karma living there. So can we say that people who are in the heavenly planets, they are not devotees, but they just have
No, otherwise it would contradict the statement of the Padma Purana, wouldn't it? The thing is, okay, so how are those karma kandis, how are they devotees? Because they're just doing karma kanda, but they're doing some sort of devotional service, even unknowingly so. Just like if they do, Agnihotra, they're offering mantras to Vishnu, the offerings for Vishnu, for instance. They're not intending to do so, that's not their motive, but they're unknowingly performing devotional service. So on one level, they've gotten to the heavenly planet by some, there are grades of devotees, of course, they're sometimes very grossly so. But that qualification is there. Why? Because of past devotional service that was rendered by them, was an important point. And by past devotional service, even unknowingly so, one can take birth in a pious family, etc. like that. Just like we hear, for example, Narada Muni, he wasn't particularly born in a devotee family. We don't hear of anything like that. But because of his... And he associated with those sages, but he didn't associate with them necessarily because he was thinking they were very elevated devotees or something like that. He wasn't particularly looking for spiritual knowledge or anything like that. He was taking their remnants. He said they were very kind and gentle and merciful upon me. And then in his next birth, he became Narada Muni, for example. We don't necessarily hear of him the rest of his birth, like taking up Krishna consciousness after having gotten the association with sages. But by that, and also he was young. So by that, largely what was unknown devotional service, he attained the position of devotee. Yeah. But devotional service was there. So it could be the same thing for the demigods. Even for those who are actually going through the process of karma kanda, because the whole process of karma kanda is exactly that, to unknowingly induce people to Krishna consciousness, ultimately, in the ultimate sense. So if one gets a position in the heavenly planets, then it's not that you can become we have an example. It's not like you become like Ravana, for instance. So, and go to the heavenly planets. So,
where do demons who do austerities go?
Down. Even in the lower planets, for example, there's lower planets where there's standards of higher sense gratification than the middle planetary systems. So there's scope for that there too. For example,
Vilaswarga is better than Swarga.
Vilaswarga is what?
Subterranean heavenly planets, where Bali Maharaj.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking that.
And it says it in the Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
The reason Vamana sends Bali Maharaj down
Yeah.
is because there's a sense of the enjoyment in Bila Swarga is more than the heavenly planets. It's written in the Bhagavatam. Right? Because it's just straight full on sense gratification. No need to worry about worshipping Vishnu. No need to worry about anything. Just go for it and enjoy. And the only fear and anxiety you experience is when the Sudarshan Chakra comes and just cuts your head off out of nowhere. But other than that, you're good to go. You just go, you enjoy like anything, no problem. And then all of a sudden you die. And then, otherwise, if you're on the heavenly planets, the demons are trying to come and take you over and do. You never hear the demigods are like, enough of this, I want to enjoy in Bilaswarga, and they go and they take over. You never read that in the Bhagavatam. You always read how the demons are coming up and trying to take over the heavenly planets up there. You never hear they're going down there, the Bilaswarga, and trying to do it. You even see in the Ramayana, the Kuveras, before Kuvera occupies Lanka, it was inhabited by the Nivatakavachas or some particular kind of demons. Once Lord Vishnu came and drove them out, they went to the heavenly planets. There's no description that, to the Bilaswarga, there's no description that they went down and further killed them and took over their spot. They never do that. Seems like karmically speaking, Bilaswarga you enjoy more.
So there you go.
One more question. You were mentioning that in CC there is a section of qualities of devotees to distinguish devotees from non-devotees. What are the verses for this one?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It's somewhere in Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's like it is. Yeah, somewhere between like chapter 20, chapter Madhya Lila, chapter 20 or 9. No, 20 through like 24. I think it extends something like that. I don't know exactly the verses. Sorry. I can look at one thing, see if I can pull it up, but otherwise I don't know. Anything else in the meantime? Yes, Neem. Actually here, no, sorry.
22 verse number 78.
What is that?
Madhya 22 verse number 78.
Madhya 2278. You can read it independently because it's long. I didn't, what is that?
Yeah.
What is that? Madhya
2278.
2278. I think they're also given in, no, I don't think they're in the Nectar Devotion.
Yeah. Madhya 2278.
Yeah.
78 to 80.
So I have a quick comment and a question. In Bhagavatam it says that if no one is qualified to be in the position of Brahma or any other demigods, that Krishna comes and personally becomes a demigod. I just think that's interesting because like sometimes there's just people that nobody is qualified out of the like trillions of jivas.
Yeah, could be. It's a very high post. I mean, even the gap between Lord Brahma and the other demigods is pretty good. It's a big. I mean, to us, we kind of think like, well, anyways, just the demigod. But Lord Brahma is Shakti Vesh Avatar. He's not just any ordinary.
He even mentions Indra sometimes. No one's qualified to be Indra sometimes.
And then Indra, if you look at the potency of Indra compared to Brahma, I mean, heck, the post of Indra is practically created by Brahma. You know, there's a big gap between Brahma and Indra, even though we don't like conventionally. Sometimes we just think, okay, the Indra, Brahma, because they're grouped together sometimes. Shiva, Indra, Brahma, but there's a huge gap between them, yeah.
And also, you mentioned earlier in the beginning that we've all like been in the position of Lord Brahma.
Yeah.
But if he always gets liberated, it says in Bhagavad Gita.
Not always, if he's a devotee.
It said in Bhagavad Gita, in like somewhere 14, 15, or 16 chapters somewhere, that Brahma always gets liberated at the end.
I think there's a caveat there. If there's not a caveat in that purport, there's a... In fact, I think this is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita itself, actually, this point about Lord Brahma attaining liberation. Definitely it's in the Bhagavatam. Because I think, I read Gita recently, I was surprised such a technical point came in Bhagavad Gita. But, so anyway, take it one way or another, only if he's a devotee does he attain liberation. It's not that every single time Lord Brahma attains liberation. It depends on his motive and how he's acting, etc. like that. So how Lord Brahma becomes averse to Krishna is bewildering to me. But such a situation, because he can see Krishna, he can see this. I mean, heck, his world is illuminated by Brahman, not by like any like material light. So how he can become averse to Krishna consciousness is such a wonderful thing, you know. I mean, it happened to us, inevitably so. Somehow or another, Maya is so strong. Yeah, but it's not that you attain the post of Brahma and then it's just all well and good and safe. Because because that independence is also always there too. That's another thing. So it's not such an automatic process. So there is. It's either in that purport or is in some Bhagavatam purport, some random hidden in the Bhagavatam, but it's there. So, anything else for the men? Yes.
So, a quick comment. I was thinking about how you were mentioning that the demigods are devotees to some extent. Yeah. But demons can also be devotees, like Vritrasura. And then demigods, like Indra, can manifest the qualities of non-devotees, or appear to be non-devotees at a particular time. And so I was thinking that, would it be safe to say generally demigods are devotees, and generally demons are non-devotees, just as generally people born into Brahmana families manifest the qualities of Brahmanas, but it doesn't mean they're automatically Brahmanas.
Well, it becomes a little different. For demigods, there's a special, because that birth has specifically come about because of because of the devotional service. Now, birth in a demonic family, sometimes we see devotees take birth in a demonic family, could be Krishna's arrangement. For example, Srila Prabhupada said of his own disciples who took birth in Western countries that Lord Chaitanya arranged for you to take birth in these families. He told Satsvarupa Das Goswami that. He also told, well, not just that, in Bhagavatam itself, for example, Prahlad, who was born in Ugrajati, who considers himself to be born in Daitya, the family of Daityas, demons, we translate as. But he was a pure devotee. Why did he take birth there? Because Nrsimha wanted him to do so. Similarly, you're offering the example of Vritrasura.
He was
he took birth in a demoniac body. He appeared in a demoniac body, but we see, that it was arranged such because Krishna wanted to ultimately arrange for his liberation and take him back home, back to Godhead. Ultimately so. And you can't say he was a demon, although he was in the body of a demon, because the real symptom of a devotee or a demon, the symptom of a demigod is that, by this verse I quoted earlier, is that he's a devotee of Vishnu. So, even if one is in the body of a demon, as it was Prahlad, he can't be considered a demon because he's a devotee of Vishnu. To that extent, he's a devotee of Vishnu. Now, of course, in the material world, you're asking, sometimes Indra exhibits these things, and other demigods too. Envy of Krishna, well, they're mixed devotees, that's the thing. The situation is such in the material world that it's not that it's just, if you take a strict definition, only pure Vishnu Bhakta, who is Vishnu Bhakta, is a pure devotee, okay, but even among the demigods, there are those who exhibit envy of Krishna. So even among the demigods, there's asuric tendencies sometimes. For example, there's the tendency to want to become the controller, to want to become the enjoyer of things, so that although they're in bodies of demigods, they're not completely pure, because otherwise they wouldn't be in the material world. The quality of goodness, the mode of goodness isn't completely pure. You don't find unadulterated goodness. Even this word, we use this word unadulterated goodness to refer to Vishuddha Sattva. Otherwise, the mode of goodness is always mixed with passion and ignorance, which are largely demoniac qualities, specifically ignorance. So even the demigods, they're tainted by these things a little bit. Otherwise, they would be transcendental. So yeah. Is that sufficient? Is that like...
And Vritrasura becoming taking birth as a demon isn't the same, is kind of unique as a demon birth, right? Because he was Chitraketu before.
Who was he?
Chitraketu.
Chitraketu.
That's a pretty pious position, being Chitraketu.
Yeah.
And then he got cursed.
Yeah, for example, you see the nature of the curse, and even that curse wasn't even necessarily like real, he didn't even really commit an offense, if you take it like that, as probably explains in the purport.
Yeah.
Superficially so, but Shiva wasn't offended. And they were like friends too. Uma was offended, or she took offense on the part of Shiva, but really there was nothing wrong that was committed there. It was an arrangement, I believe Srila Prabhupada explains in that purport, around that section.
So it seems that when devotees take birth in demoniac, when they take demoniac births, it's like, it's always kind of an exceptional thing.
Yeah.
Like in the case with
It's
Prahlad Maharaj. and
Krishna's
Bali
arrangement.
Maharaj.
Krishna personally arranges a birth for. If somebody's actually a devotee, Krishna arranges for their purification. He oversees them, their journey in the material world, and he arranges for their birth. So even the birth of a devotee's birth can't be exactly calculated in terms of karma either. So Krishna always has a hand in that, even if they appear in a degraded form, for example. So, just like if you take a more degraded form, just like you have Gajendra there, but Krishna arranged for him to take that form, He was a devotee, huh? What is that? Yeah, a very good example. So yeah. Is that okay? Is that answer? Okay, Matis, anything from? No? Yes. Shikamura.
Only because it just came up, if it's okay, on this Virtuous Sura and demons and devotees topic, because I'm reading there right now. I've been wondering for a long time, what is the difference between Indra's enemy and the enemy of Indra? Because that's mentioned at the beginning of that whole section, it's straightforward, and I'm supposed to understand it, but I don't understand.
Yeah, can you clarify your question?
Yeah, so when Vritrasura is born out of this sacrifice, it's because the priest pronounced the mantra in such a way that he said,
intonation.
Yeah, so because of a long vowel, it became Indra's enemy would come out instead of the enemy of Indra would come out instead of Indra's enemy, and I'm wondering what is the difference? I don't understand what the technical difference is there.
I would have to. The thing is, one thing is we're translating into English from Sanskrit. That's one difficulty there. I would have to see the specific thing itself. I know specifically there.
I don't know if that means
I don't know. My
he's
memory of that
inimical
pastime
to-
is also a little bit hazy.
Okay, there's just technical.
Sorry, I don't know offhand. The only thing I know offhand is that he elongated a vowel and he gave the incorrect intonation.
I know it was a little off topic.
You know something?
Yeah, where you see Daityendra 3, there's one verse also which has a similar thing like that. And Daityendra 3, I was just reading this verse this morning, and it means that which can destroy the Daityas. So in this regard, in this verse that I'm reading, is Krishna, topics about Krishna Divyoshadam. The topics about Krishna can kill the Daityas. So Daityendra, right? So it means the enemy of the Daityas. Right? That's what it says, enemy of. It seems like in the context. Yes, so the enemy of Indra means what's how does it come?
At least in the one purport, I'm pretty sure Prabhupada writes.
Yeah, I read that. You mean?
Indra's enemy versus the enemy of Indra.
Yeah. Okay, so Twashta intended to chant Indra Shatro, meaning O enemy of Indra. In this mantra, the word Indra is in the possessive case, and the word Indra Shatro is called a Tatpurusha compound. Unfortunately, instead of chanting the mantra short, Twashta chanted it long, and its meaning changed from the enemy of Indra to Indra, who is an enemy. So usually enemy of Indra would mean that someone, I'm your enemy and I'm going to come to kill you. So let's just say we are born enemies of the Mayavadis, right? Yeah. Does that mean that we're going to be killed by the Mayavadis, or we're going to kill the Mayavad philosophy? Exactly, right? Kill the Mayavad philosophy. But according to this verse, if you say Madhvas, who is an enemy of the Mayavadis, that would mean that someone who's going to be defeated by the Mayavadis, like that.
Okay. So Virtuous Sura is coming.
To get killed by Indra.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Oh, sorry.